Ashiya Hokuto, a high school student, was sitting in a history class where the teacher was talking about the mystical past of his people. The teacher talked about how the aristocrats of the Heian era relied on divination. Sometimes you couldn't even go to the toilet without it. This was the time of the Omyoji doctrine. The Omyoji were in the business of exorcising evil spirits. They also fought curses that could kill other people. Among the famous Omyoji were Abeno Seimi and Doman Ashiya. Ashiya looked out the window and saw an unknown man with a strange mask on his face. At this point, Ashiya heard the teacher say that Omyoji sometimes kill. As you can see, Omyoji were not always on the side of good. Some cursed people, causing them to die. They changed history, changed time, cured diseases and held festivals. Omyoji could ward off natural disasters. The lesson is over. The teacher announced that the next day's topic would be the Kamakura period. Hokuto's friend suggested he go get something to eat. Suddenly, a classmate named Chika approached Hokuto. Chika liked Hokuto. He was embarrassed by her attention. Chika asked if it was really Hokuto's birthday tomorrow. She also asked if he would have free time tomorrow morning. Hokuto happily replied that there was time for her. Then the girl offered to meet him. Hokuto was very surprised at the offer. Chika's girlfriends noticed the boy's embarrassment. His reaction made them laugh, and they giggled softly. Hokuto decided to take control of the situation. He set the exact time of the meeting and said he would be at the agreed place. Hokuto and Chika agreed to meet at 7 o'clock on the bridge tomorrow. Unlike Hokuto, his friend immediately understood Chika's intention. She probably wanted to give him a birthday present. Hokuto was looking forward to tomorrow. A few months ago, Hokuto confessed his feelings to Chika Komatsu. At first, they were shy to even approach each other. After a month, Hokuto accompanied her home for the first time. The second month, he took her hand. Tomorrow is the third month of their relationship and Hokuto's birthday. Hokuto decided that tomorrow would be the day of their first kiss. He already immersed in dreams of their future together and a long life until his last breath. He dreamed of dying with her on the same day. After class, the roar of a motorcycle was heard outside the school window. Hokuto and his friend looked out the window. A guy on a motorcycle was approaching the school. They thought that maybe he had come to pick up his girlfriend. The students got worried. The guy looked cool and even dangerous. Hokuto looked at him with envy. He wished he could look so brutal too. Hokuto and his friend noticed a guy on a motorcycle looking at the windows of their classroom. Suddenly, Hokuto and the boy's gazes crossed. The boy waved his hand. Hokuto jumped out at him without explaining anything to anyone. Hokuto threw himself on the guy's neck. It was his twin brother Nanto. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. Suddenly, Hokuto was angry. His brother had been visiting him for a long time. With his brother, Hokuto was especially close. Hokuto was outraged. They hadn't seen Nanto for 10 years. And now Nanto suddenly shows up at school on his bike. Nanto was madly glad to see his brother. Their long separation wasn't his fault. Nanto said that it was the teacher's motorcycle. As mentioned before, Hokuto and Nanto are twin brothers. They used to be inseparable. Just 10 years ago, they did everything together, but due to the death of their parents, Hokuto, as the youngest, was taken away by distant relatives. Nanto, the eldest, was to be the heir to the family business, so he was taken away by the main family. The brothers had a hard time parting. Nanto promised Hokuto that he would come to visit him, but he didn't keep his promise. Hokuto waited for his brother every day. Whatever the weather, he sat on the porch and waited faithfully for his brother. Years passed. The relatives who raised Hokuto tried to distract him from his sadness for his brother, but nothing worked. Hokuto became sad, silent and withdrawn. Over time, the longing was replaced by resentment toward his brother. Hokuto reproached his brother for never coming to visit him. Hokuto felt that he was no longer part of the Ashiya family. He was now an ordinary man. Suddenly Nanto fell to his knees in front of his brother. He apologized for not showing up for 10 years. He explained to Hokuto that he had decided then, 10 years ago, that he would run the family business as well as he could, but he doesn't have a suitable assistant. He knew that Hokuto had decided to quit Omyoji, but right now his brother needed his help. Nanto told his brother that his teacher was now unable to continue working with him. He asked for his brother's help. Hokuto indifferently refused his brother. Nanto was infuriated by his brother's refusal. He crawled on the ground in front of him, but went unheard. Hokuto replied that he could not help. He was an ordinary man now. What could he be of use? In addition, Hokuto added that tomorrow was his birthday and he had arranged to meet his girlfriend in the morning. Hokuto indifferently said goodbye to his brother. He said he was expected at class. Then Nanto took an airplane out of his pocket and launched it at his brother. Hokuto noticed the airplane, but didn't realize what it was. Seeing Hokuto's surprised look, Nanto explained to him that if the airplane reached its target, Hokuto would be hurt. Hokuto was angry. He held his hand out toward the flying airplane. His fingertips lit up, and the airplane burst into flames and turned to ash. Hokuto was very surprised. He didn't realize he still had superpowers. Nanto hadn't expected his brother to do such a thing either, but he was pleasantly surprised. Nanto put his arm around his brother and said that if he didn't remember his power, his hands did. Hokuto didn't realize how he'd done it. It all happened so quickly. Nanto stood by his brother. He told him that this is what always happens, and that the power manifests itself on automatic. The Ashiya family's business, Omyoji, dates back to the Heian period. Fortune-telling, rituals and even magic, a wide range of services. Hokuto felt he was inferior in strength to his brother. Nanto convinced Hokuto that without him, he was just a slug, and the help required is a simple exorcism. He only requires him to do what Nanto tells him and everything will work out. Nanto fell to his knees in front of his brother again and begged for his help. Hokuto had his doubts. He suggested that his brother find another Omyoji. Nanto insisted. He said Hokuto was the closest Omyoji he knew. Hokuto was the only one who could be a substitute teacher. Because Hokuto and Nanto are twins, they're perfectly compatible. In the end, Nanto declared that if tomorrow was his and his brother's birthday, it would be last day for him. After all, without Hokuto, he would perish. After saying that, Hokuto heard his brother. Hokuto agreed to help, but only once. Hokuto left with Nanto on his motorcycle. Hokuto's classmates watched him from the window. They were very surprised that he left with some unknown person without saying anything to anyone. Chika was also lost. No one expected Hokuto to ever become a good Omyoji. That's why they sent him away. From then on, the brothers lived in separate houses. Nanto took Hokuto to a house. They were met on the doorstep by an elderly couple who lived in the neighborhood. They watched the brothers closely and were curious. Nanto told his brother that they needed to change their clothes. Nanto put on a ceremonial suit and Hokuto changed into a tuxedo. Nanto solemnly announced to the owners of the house that they had come to perform an exorcism. Hokuto felt uncomfortable in this appearance. The landlady led the brothers into the house. The girl was glad to have guests. She told them that the strange things in the house had been going on for the last few days. Her family moved here 3 months ago. All this time, the family has been haunted by the feeling that someone is in the guest room of the house. And at night, it's like a rap song is playing. She told her husband about it, but he suggested that they might have imagined it. Hokuto thought about how the family was just going through the stress of the recent move and there was nothing paranormal here. The girl also added that recently her young daughter was almost hit by a car. When the car ran over the child, the mother saw that her girl was bounced by some shadows. They were very frightened. A little girl went up to Hokuto and asked him if he liked dogs. The mother said that the daughter keeps talking about a dog, but they don't have any pets. The little girl blurted out that she loves dogs very much, then offered to show her brothers her doggy. A girl, her daughter and her brothers went out of the house into the garden. The girl shared with them her assumption that there might be a stray dog near the house, but the neighbors had never seen dogs there. So, the girl didn't know what to think. Maybe it was that thing they kept in the backyard. The girl pointed to a structure that looked like an altar. The girl explained to the brothers that their family came from abroad, so they don't understand anything about such things. Nanto listened to the girl carefully and said that he understood everything and they could rely on them. The girl was happy. The brothers stayed the night in the house, in the living room, where they sat and waited for the manifestation of the inexplicable. Nanto had brought a bat with him, which surprised Hokuto. Is it possible to exorcise a spirit with that? Hokuto realized that there was no problem. Inari's shrine is located in the backyard of this house. The fox spirit just got angry. The owner should make an offering and it would be over. Nanto doubted Hokuto's version. Perhaps it was even simpler than he thought. He asked Hokuto if he remembered how to burn incense. Hokuto hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, music played loudly from the turntable. That was really rap. The evil one showed up. Hokuto looked out of the window at the shrine. There was some kind of shadow near it. What was it? Nanto was amused at the enthusiasm with which Hokuto took up the task. Shadow was already in the house, in the living room. Hokuto asked Nanto what they should do. Nanto was calm. He had already started his ritual and told his brother to just observe. Nanto began pointing out places where he could see the uncleanness. He sent fireballs to those places, trying to catch and burn the spirit. The girl and her daughter sat in the room and heard rumbling in the house. Afraid to go out to see what was going on, Hokuto shouted to Nanto not to mess up someone else's house. Hokuto noticed that Nanto had burned the music speakers that were blasting music. Nanto said that he would now finish what was left, and the rap problem would be solved. These words were followed by another fiery attack from Nanto. Hokuto didn't approve of his brother's actions. It was too much for him. Now the hosts would have to make repairs. The brothers noticed that there were other guests in the living room besides them. There were two masked creatures in the room who were hiding from the brothers. Nanto noticed the uninvited guests. Nanto took out a ritual amulet and cast a spell. At that moment, flames appeared around the creatures. The spirits couldn't believe their eyes. Real flames? Footsteps began to be heard around the room. Nanto gave his brother the command to chase after the creatures. Hokuto, bat in hand, followed their steps and chased them around the room. Cornering the devils, Hokuto began attacking them with his bat. Hokuto liked that job. The bat really works in this case. The creatures could no longer hide themselves. Cornered, the spirits attempted to attack Hokuto. Then Hokuto pulled out another weapon, a windshield wiper. He sprayed the windshield wiper in the creature's face. The creature started thrashing around the room and screaming with pain in its eyes. The brothers thought it might not be an otherworldly entity at all. Nanto also found a remote sound sensor that had been installed by someone in the room. The brothers ripped the mask off one of the creatures. That's when it became clear to everyone. They were not entities, but ordinary people. In the face of one of them, Hokuto recognized the elderly man who had met them outside the house. They were the neighbors of the owners of the house. It was clear that the second person was the neighbor's wife. The frightened lady of the house came out of the sleeping room, with her daughter in her arms. An elderly couple of neighbors were unmasked. Nanto demanded an explanation from them. The neighbors confessed that they were possessed by the usual jealousy. Nanto threw the neighbors out of the house and ordered them not to come here again. The landlady was pleased with the brothers' work. Now she could feel at ease in her house. Now it was clear where the rapping and noise came from. But what about the shadow the girl saw? At that moment the mistress's little daughter jumped out of her arms onto the floor and ran somewhere. She shouted for a dog and ran joyfully towards it. The spirit of a fox appeared in the room. The girl crouched down beside it and began to caress it. The spirit looked very friendly. Nanto explained to the frightened mother that the spirit of the fox had saved the girl by preventing an accident. The mother was very surprised. She had never seen anything like this before. The girl said that all this time she had been feeding the little dog and it had become attached to her. Hokuto noticed dumplings mold from the ground at Inari's shrine. The girl had been molding them all along and saving them for the little dog. Her mother calmed down and promised the girl that from now on they would make more generous offerings for their guardian. Nanto was not so relieved by the happy ending. He was against the spirit being among humans. Nanto insisted that the spirit must be returned to Fushima. The landlady and Hokuto stared at Nanto in surprise. They didn't understand what it meant to bring a spirit back to Fushima. Nanto then explained that the structure was a shrine from the Fushimi Inari shrine. The family that lived here was not familiar with the local customs and could make mistakes. Leaving such a powerful artifact with them was too risky. Therefore, Nanto decided to perform an exorcism rite. The mistress was frightened. She did not want the spirit of the fox to be harmed. Nanto reassured her that no harm would come to their family. As Nanto began to recite the spell, the fox spirit approached the woman and girl to say goodbye. Nanto added that when the family became more familiar with the customs, they would be able to bring the spirit back on their own. The fox spirit returned to its place in the shrine of Fushimi Inari. As he continued to recite the spell, the shrine began to emit a powerful beam of light that engulfed the fox spirit. The spirit of the fox sat on the roof of the house to say goodbye. The girl also said goodbye to her pet. The spirit disappeared. Now the family was completely safe. The brothers were returning on a motorcycle. They persuaded a woman to get a dog for her daughter. When Hokuto was little he didn't fully understand what an omyodo was. He thought they only dealt with curses. Now it turned out to be quite an interesting activity. Nanto noticed that things didn't always go so smoothly. Nanto asked his brother if he would stay with him. Hokuto replied that the first thing he would do would be to meet Chuka. Nanto was incredulous at his plans, saying that girls break up families. Nanto brought his brother to the bridge where he was to meet the girl. He was glad to see his brother and was grateful for his help, but he was not going to stay long. Hokuto was disappointed. He revived that his brother would give him more time. However, Nanto stated that he still had to look for a teacher. Then Hokuto reminded his brother that today was his birthday. As a present, Hokuto asked his brother to fulfill one request of his. He wished to introduce his brother to Chuka. Nanto agreed to stay for a while. Hokuto really wanted his favorite girl to know that he has a twin brother that he was separated from years ago. Even though he's stupider than Hokuto and a creepy brute, he's still a good person. He never told anyone about it because he was afraid of not being believed and being laughed at. Chika was already waiting for Hokuto. Hokuto wanted Chika to know about his home and his family. Chika was his first and last love. Seeing Hokuto, the girl was overjoyed. Hokuto ran towards Chika to meet her. Then he noticed an unknown masked man standing on the bridge, far away from the girl. Hokuto had earlier seen the man from the window of the school. Suddenly, a bloody wound appeared on the girl's chest. The masked creature mortally wounded Chika. It whispered of evil and 3 divine treasures. The creature put a curse on the girl, and that's just the beginning. The mortally wounded unconscious girl collapsed down the bridge. Hokuto stood silently staring at the water that had forever taken away the only love of his life. He couldn't come to his senses. Passers-by became worried. Many saw that the girl had fallen from the bridge into the water. People called for an ambulance. A black blot appeared on the water where the girl had fallen, with an eye in the center looking directly at Hokuto. It was a curse. People began to demand that Hokuto tell them what he had seen and what had happened to the girl. But Hokuto could not explain anything. In an agony of grief, Hokuto stood and screamed on the bridge in helplessness and grief. Nanto stood by the motorcycle and waited for Hokuto to return. He thought about the fact that he would be alone again, because his brother had chosen to live the normal life of a normal person. He reassured himself that there was nothing wrong with that. He was used to being alone. He always had been. Nothing would change for him. However, Nanto could not hide his annoyance at this life and his loneliness. Nanto noticed that Hokuto was lingering. Suddenly, he heard car horns. To Nanto, that siren was announcing the start of the journey. The news reports were reporting an incident on the bridge. The announcer said that there had been an accident on a bridge in Tokyo this morning when a high school student fell off the bridge. The girl's death was confirmed shortly after she was rushed to the hospital. Supposedly, the girl was hit by a car. The driver who hit the girl is still on the run. Police were on the scene. Hokuto was being held as a possible suspect until the circumstances of the girl's death were determined. His first love was dead, but he had to move on. The look in his eyes said he had no intention of giving up. Hokuto and Chika first met in the spring of their freshman year, in the library after class. Hokuto took one look at her and couldn't look away. It wasn't until a week later that he learned her name. She was in the library with her friend. The first time he spoke to her was 6 months later. It was also in the library. Then Hokuto thought about the fact that she had a cute voice, but didn't bother to get acquainted because the girl was very embarrassed. Then Hokuto runs into her before winter break. Then their eyes met and they realized that acquaintance could not be avoided. He first touched her sophomore year in the spring, again in the library after school. That was the day Hokuto confessed his feelings to Chika. His touch was so awkward. Hokuto rewound the memories of Chika in his head, but his musings were interrupted by the sharp voice of the investigator. He demanded that Hokuto tell everything he remembered. The investigator did not believe what Hokuto told him, namely about the curses and the strange masked man. Hokuto insisted on his point. Chika had been killed, and it wasn't the first time. Otherwise, why did she die so strangely? Suddenly, uttering those words, Hokuto realized he had said something unnecessary. He covered his mouth with his hand and stared silently at the investigator. The investigator got tired of Hokuto's stories and then he decided to act differently. He asked Hokuto directly who cursed the girl then. He said that their job was to solve crimes, so Hokuto should tell them everything as it was. Otherwise, he or his brother would become a suspect. At that time, the investigator's supervisor came into the office and informed him that there had been a change of plans. Investigator Muroi began to report to his superior on the work done. Then Hokuto saw that the chief was not alone. Nanto had come with him, and he was staring blankly at the walls of the office. Hokuto pondered why his brother had come here with the police. The chief informed Investigator Muroi that this was no longer a matter for their department and the investigation should be discontinued. Nanto cast a memory removal spell on Investigator Muroi to make him forget everything Hokuto had told him. When he left the interrogation room, Investigator Muroi momentarily forgot even what he was doing in that office. Nanto had told Hokuto that the old man would forget everything, and also that the second policeman wouldn't hear them, since he was already under a stun spell. Nanto sprawled businesslike in a chair in front of his brother and asked what had happened on the bridge. Hokuto was not happy to see his brother. He was angry. He rudely asked him why he was here. Nanto explained to his brother that now it was no longer a matter for the Japanese police, but for the Omyoji clan. They already have suspicions that someone has cursed Chika. Hokuto had never heard of the Omyoji clan. Nanto had told him that the police couldn't handle uncleanness and other magicians, especially when it comes to killing with curses. That's when the Omyoji clan comes in. Hokuto really didn't remember anything about the Omyoji clan. Suddenly, Hokuto was seized with rage. He didn't understand who could have cursed his girlfriend and why. After all, Chika had done nothing wrong to anyone. Nanto suggested that Chika might have cursed herself. After all, there are times when a person doesn't even realize that they have a talent for magic. For example, he might be able to tell fortunes. Nanto placed a notebook on the table in front of Hokuto that had occult signs on it. Nanto explained that this notebook was left to him by his teacher before he disappeared. Many incidents of curses were recorded in this notebook. Nanto opened the notebook and began leafing through it. He said that it contained a record of an instance where black ceremonial paper was used. Hokuto pondered his brother's words. He recalled that Chika had once told him that she liked horoscopes, but she just loved the constellations, and she couldn't kill herself with it. Suddenly, Hokuto remembered the fox-shaped keychain that Chika had. He had noticed it a long time ago. Hokuto began to recall the image of the man who had been with them on the bridge the day Chika died. He was wearing a fox mask. Hokuto told his brother that he had seen a man wearing a black fox mask at school this morning. The man seemed strange to Hokuto because he was dressed old-fashioned. The same man was also on the bridge when Chika died. Nanto pondered this information. Hokuto became animated. Now they would be able to find the culprit. But Nanto was not in favor of his brother's idea. Nanto informed his brother that he would not be involved. After that, he took the notebook and was about to leave the interrogation room. In the aftermath, Nanto asked his brother to forget about meeting him. Hokuto got angry. He stopped his brother and demanded an explanation from him. He couldn't live peacefully knowing that his girlfriend's killer was on the loose. He grabbed Nanto by the shoulder. At that moment, the notebook fell out of Nanto's hands and opened by itself. Between the pages of the notebook lay a black quill pen. Hokuto stared at the pen and tried to read the notes in the notebook. Then Nanto apologized to his brother and said he shouldn't know. After these words, Nanto cast an oblivion spell to make his brother forget everything he had just seen. Hokuto began to wiggle out of the spell. At that moment, the police chief came to his senses. The chief was under the influence of otherworldly forces. He spoke not in his own voice, but in the voice of an old woman. The voice said that Nanto had himself to blame. Also, the voice said that the northern boy might know. If need be, Nanto could use the oblivion spell next time. Nanto was furious. He started yelling at the old woman who was talking to him through the police chief's body. Nanto was outraged that she was eavesdropping on his conversation with his brother. He grabbed the chief by the collar. The old lady then replied that Himiko was an idiot and she had told him so many times. In this country, the ears of the Amido clan are everywhere. How else would they track Nanto's movements? Nanto showed the old woman the facts. Hokuto watched silently and couldn't believe his eyes. He asked Nanto where the voice came from and why the police chief looked like a doll. The old woman laughed at this. After all, Hokuto was so surprised to see a doll, and Hokuto himself has Ashiya's blood running through him. The old woman told Hokuto that the masked man he saw on the bridge was a master of curses. The Omyoji clan has been hunting him for a long time. The Amido clan doesn't know who this man really is. All they know is that he spreads his curses everywhere, and with one of his curses, he most likely killed the Hokuto girl. The old woman added that Nanto's teacher was the strongest among the Omyoji. He also hunted the black fox, but eventually disappeared. The old woman then asked Hokuto if he wanted to know what kind of person killed his girlfriend. Nanto interrupted their conversation. He grabbed the policeman again and started yelling to the old woman that this wasn't their agreement. She was not to interfere with Hokuto. She had promised. Then the old woman replied that the black fox had already implicated Hokuto in this, and she could not afford to leave someone who knew about Omyoji in the dark. The old woman explained to Hokuto that his brother wanted to use oblivion magic on him, but it would be a waste. Nanto was furious at the old woman's words. In spite of Nanto shaking the policeman's body as hard as he could, the old woman continued to talk to Hokuto. She called him a northern boy, and added that the master of curses must have smelled Hokuto. The old woman said that she realizes that Hokuto was born without talent in a famous Omyoji family, and he has turned a blind eye to it for a long time. But he can't ignore it anymore. The old woman told Hokuto that now, no matter where he went, the fox would find him. He can't run, he can't hide. The Omyoji clan will give Hokuto time to say goodbye to his loved ones. No matter what decision he makes, Hokuto was released from prison. He went out into the street and wandered on his way, pondering the old woman's words. Nanto followed him. He told Hokuto not to listen to what the old woman said, but Nanto didn't listen to his brother. Nanto told Hokuto to go back to his normal life. Then Nanto asked his brother what promise the old woman had made to him. Suddenly it came to Hokuto that his brother wanted to make him forget everything, to make him not understand anything, to go back to school where Chika would no longer be there. Hokuto became furious. He demanded his brother's honesty and frank talk. Nanto admitted that he could still do it. Hokuto was disappointed in his brother. He hit him. Hokuto couldn't forgive his brother for wanting to make him forget everything. Forget that Chika had come to the bridge to wish him a happy birthday, and the fact that they wanted to spend time together. Did his brother want to make it all seem like a lie to Hokuto? It was too cruel. Hokuto calmed down and said that he was glad he was finally able to see his brother. Nanto then replied to Hokuto that the truth would be the same for everyone. Komatsu Chika was killed in an accident. The culprit will be arrested in 10 days. That would all be the truth for Hokuto as well. Hearing his brother's words, Hokuto sent him to hell and left. At that time, Chika was being buried. Her classmates and teachers came to say goodbye to her. Everyone felt sorry for the girl. She was so young. Chika's mom was very worried, even stopped eating. People were outraged that the police still hadn't caught the criminal. Hokuto walked into the ceremonial hall and saw a woman in mourning. He realized it was Chika's mother. Hokuto walked up to her and spoke. The woman recognized Hokuto immediately. She asked if he had seen the car that had hit her daughter. Hokuto wanted to tell her that Chika wasn't hit by any car. She was killed by a curse. The woman kept asking Hokuto if he saw the license plates. Could he help the police? Hokuto couldn't find the words to answer his inconsolable mother. Hokuto still couldn't say everything he knew about Chika's death. He only answered that he saw nothing because he was only looking at Chika. That's why he didn't remember anything. Chika's mom lost her last hope of finding her daughter's killer. In tears, she fell to her knees and began to sob. A shocked Hokuto was approached by Chika's father. He apologized for his wife and said that they had taken their daughter's death hard. Hokuto replied to Chika's father that no matter how long it took, he would catch whoever killed her. Chika's father thanked Hokuto for his words. After the funeral, Hokuto went to his brother's house. Nanto was waiting for him. Nanto said that now he would just use oblivion magic and Hokuto would become a normal person. After all, that's what he came here for. Hokuto answered him that it was no longer possible. Like that old woman said, he's already been dragged into this. He won't be able to escape. Nanto was adamantly opposed to Hokuto returning to this world again. Hokuto was touched by his brother's words. He had always been like that, always trying to protect Hokuto. While he was living a quiet life and going to school, Nanto was training and fighting evil, and now he had become very tough. But now Hokuto has made the decisions to go with his brother to find the black fox. Nanto tried to talk his brother out of it. But Hokuto was determined to find out who killed Chiku and why. Hokuto wanted to know why she had to die. He must find out, so that he could one day go to the people she cared about and tell them everything. And Nanto will be looking for his teacher. Hokuto added that on top of that, he doesn't want to forget about Chika or him. Still, Hokuto was glad to have met his brother. Nanto gave up. That same day, Hokuto left home. In order to go away with his brother, his foster parents let him go easily. They didn't need to explain the reasons for Hokuto's behavior. They had been prepared for Hokuto to be taken away one day. Hokuto was grateful to them for raising him. Hokuto was feeling nostalgic. Once upon a time, he and his brother were always together. Hokuto may not have the talent like his brother, but he would try not to get in the way. The fact that Hokuto has no talent, and the fact that he forgot how to use Omyoji, it was all Nanto's fault. At that moment, the old woman knew that the brothers had been reunited. She took the amulets to see their fate. Throwing the amulets, the old woman was horrified. She saw a great calamity coming. One young boy is looking for a murderer, and the other is looking for his mentor. The separated twins are finally together again, and their adventures begin. Hokuto mentally turned to Chika. He would want her to know that he had gone with his twin brother Nanto to find the killer. Middle school is closed for now, and at least his parents will get a break from him. Hokuto and Nanto traveled north, on motorcycle alone. Hokuto was not good at long rides. Hokuto was shivering from the cold. He hadn't realized that riding a motorcycle would be so cold. Nanto had said that his brother was just unhardened. There was some truth in those words. Nanto, unlike his brother, hardened himself every day. Nanto told his brother that the first thing they should do was to find some leads. Hokuto remembered that he had recently used the technique when he had burned an airplane with his hands, but he couldn't remember how he had done it. He didn't understand what had happened at all, as if it was all a dream. Nanto asked Hokuto to remember how to use one of the 9 techniques for beginner Omyoji, banishing evil. The brothers stopped outside a store where they bought cell phones. On his way out of the store, Hokuto inadvertently bumped into an unknown girl. Hokuto apologized and helped the girl up. When Hokuto picked up the bag that the stranger had dropped, he saw that inside the bag was a rifle. Hokuto was stunned and didn't know how to react to that. Suddenly, the girl covered Hokuto's mouth and pulled him outside. At this time, Nanto was in the restroom and lost sight of his brother. The girl and Hokuto were sitting outside the store. She told Hokuto that she didn't want him to get it wrong. She explained to him that she had a gun license. The girl noted that school children didn't usually show up in this neighborhood. She asked Hokuto if he had run away from home. Hokuto replied to the girl that a lot of things had happened recently and lessons had been cancelled. He came here with his brother on his motorcycle. The girl's name was Mika. She told Hokuto that sometimes the most important thing is not to look back, because there are many good things ahead. She also added that she didn't look back. Hokuto noted that this was the first time he had seen such a rifle. The girl was very pleased. She asked if Hokuto liked hunting. Mika said hunting is a very cool thing to do, and you can't get a rifle like this anywhere else. Mika was very enthusiastic about the topic of guns. She told Hokuto that unlike a rifle shoots single shots, so it is more difficult to use for hunting. But she strives for mastery, so this is the only kind of weapon she uses when hunting. Hokuto was impressed by the girl's passion. Hokuto had never been interested in guns before, but now he decided to give it a try. He thought about the fact that given his zero training, he should start training in the use of a gun. Suddenly, Hokuto thought about the fact that you had to be over 18 to use a gun license. Mika looked like his peer. Mika didn't answer that question, and asked Hokuto not to dwell on the little things. Hokuto asked his new acquaintance what she was hunting. Mika replied that she was hunting a bear. She said that recently a bear had gotten into the mountains. It's not the first time it's happened. Hokuto was scared. Mika added that the bear first appeared 10 years ago. They nicknamed him Demon Bear. This bear was so strong that it ate local wild boars and deer, but then it became particularly violent and attacked a local girl. The headman gathered and began to discuss what to do with him, whether the villagers should leave the village. Mika was just a little girl then. She doesn't remember everything exactly, but some exorcists came to them. They called themselves Omyoji and were generally suspicious. Hokuto was at a loss for words. Mika added that the Omyoji then said that the bear was the work of the local mountain god. It was as if the mountain god had cursed the bear and it was attacking people. The elders believed them, and together with these Omyoji they went to the mountains. Mika smoked and looked thoughtfully at the puffs of smoke. Mika seemed to have a hard time remembering and talking about those events. Then she added that, apparently, the exorcism had been successful, but the old men had not returned from that hike, had not come down from the mountain. Mika thought they were eaten by that bear. Then she vowed to kill the bear and avenge the old men. Hokuto became agitated. He was adamantly opposed to Mika going on a bear hunt. After all, even two Omyoji couldn't exorcise it completely. Hokuto stated that Mika shouldn't go alone to such a dangerous place. Mika didn't take Hokuto's words seriously. She hurriedly picked up her gun and said she had to go. She was grateful to Hokuto for talking to her, but said that he couldn't understand her feelings. She said goodbye to Hokuto and left. Suddenly, Hokuto felt he had to stop the girl at all costs. He called out to her. Just as Hokuto was about to tell the girl that he was an Omyoji, Nanto came up to him. He was surprised that his brother was so quick to meet girls. Nanto asked what they were talking about. Nanto teased his brother, asking if he had asked the girl for her phone number. He had heard them talking out of the corner of his ear. Hokuto stated that if Nanto heard him and the girl talking, he should stop her. The girl stopped. She turned menacingly to Hokuto and asked if he was underestimating her just because she was a girl. Hokuto began to make excuses. He said that she had it all wrong. Nanto was amused by the situation. He decided to intervene. Nanto suggested the girl meet up sometime and left her his phone number. The girl haughtily tore up the sheet with Nanto's phone number. Lastly, she told the guys that she doesn't usually remember the names of rude people. She then got on her scooter and drove away. Hokuto and Nanto stood silently staring after the girl. They made her angry. Suddenly Nanto thought of a way to stop her. He drew an image of an airplane on the ground with his finger and materialized it. Nanto sent the airplane after the girl, and it caught on her scooter. Nanto took out the teacher's notebook and opened on one of the pages. He found out that 10 years ago the teacher had come here. More importantly, he had pacified the local angry mountain god. Even though it was 10 years ago, Nanto doubted that the teacher could have failed. More likely, something had happened. Suddenly, Hokuto suggested that it might be the work of a black fox. Nanto decided that he and his brother needed to follow the girl immediately. Our heroes set their sights on the demon bear and headed for the mountains. The brothers were unprepared for the trek through the forest. They trekked through the impenetrable thickets. Nanto realized that Mika had definitely gone further into the forest than they had. Nanto realized that Mika had definitely gone farther into the woods than they had. Suddenly the brothers noticed a trail with traps. It was dangerous to follow this path. The brothers felt the air become heavy. They felt rage and sadness at the same time. These seemed to be the emotions of a mountain god. Hokuto thought about how this forest gave off a very different vibe than the fox spirit they had exorcised from the house. Suddenly someone called out to the brothers. It was Mika. She asked if they were going to climb the mountain with such heavy equipment. Hokuto was glad that they had caught up with Mika in time and she was unharmed. Mika ran up to her brothers. She hadn't expected to see them here. Hokuto announced that he was here to stop her. Hokuto thought it was crazy to go at a bear alone. Mika stated that the brothers needed to come down the mountain immediately. It was too dangerous for ordinary school children. Then Hokuto decided to tell Mika everything. He explained to her that she wasn't hunting an ordinary bear. The creature was the work of a mountain god who had done evil things here 10 years ago. Nanto tried to stop his brother from talking too much, but it was too late. Hokuto said that he and his brother were Omyoji and had come here to appease the mountain god. Nanto thought his brother was an idiot for telling her about who they really were. Mika was shocked. Schoolboys are Omyoji. She thought it was a joke. Suddenly a rustling sound came from the bushes. From there, a huge deer jumped right out at the guys. Mika took aim and shot him. The shot was accurate. The bloody carcass of the deer lay on the ground. Mika looked at Hokuto with a satisfied face and asked if he still thought it was dangerous for her to go alone. The brothers were impressed with the girl's marksmanship. Hokuto looked at Mika with admiration. Then he began to think that maybe she could handle a bear, too. Suddenly the deer that Mika had just shot came to life and stood behind her. Mika turned around and saw that the deer was possessed. It whispered that evil would blossom. Then the deer with its head shot up and attacked the girl. Hokuto was afraid for Mika. It was just like that time with Chika. It was the black fox. Hokuto would never forget that day, and would always regret not doing anything. Hokuto rushed to Mika's aid. Hokuto blamed himself for not making a move when Chika died. He thought about how maybe if he could move then, Chika wouldn't have fallen into the cold river. Hokuto decided that he would no longer make excuses for his lack of talent. Even if he couldn't use the techniques, he must be able to save Mika in time. Hokuto wanted to become like Nanto. Nanto tried to stop his brother. Hurrying could only hurt. Shielding Mika with his back, Hokuto cast the Banish Evil spell. The spirit of the deer burned before his eyes. Mika froze in horror. Hokuto didn't expect to be able to cast an evil banishment spell. This time he made it in time. Then the realization came to Hokuto that he had a chance to save Chika. Now Hokuto had decided that never again would he just stand there. Hokuto sat beside the scorched deer and couldn't believe his eyes. He looked at Nanto to see his reaction. Mika was fascinated by what she had just seen. She asked Hokuto how he did it. He told her that it was a technique for beginner Omyoji. Nanto examined the carcass of the deer for signs of evil defilement on it. Nanto asked Mika to look at the deer's muzzle where there were claw marks from some animal. Seeing the marks on the deer's corpse, Mika immediately realized that they were the claw marks of a demon bear. She wanted to touch the corpse of the deer, but Nanto stopped her. He strictly forbade her to touch the dead deer. Otherwise, the evil could have spread to the girl. Mika didn't understand what that meant. What was she to fear? Then Nanto explained to her that the foulness was a trace of cursed magic. If a defiled person is wounded, blood will flow from the wounds, which is more like a black slurry. If such blood gets into the water, entire settlements can be affected. This bear was cursed with the demon bear's curse. Nanto used a purification spell on him. Nanto added that in order to banish and purify it, a special technique must be used. Nanto told Mika that it should be clear to her by now that the common man had no business being here. He asked her to leave. Mika wasn't going to listen to Nanto. She replied that no one navigated the mountains better than her. Besides, it was now clear to her that the demon bear was even more dangerous than she had thought, so there was no way she could leave. Mika and Nanto looked at each other with hostility. Neither one wanted to obey the other. Mika then asked Hokuto whose side he was on. Nanto was counting on his brother to support him. Mika threatened to shoot Hokuto if he didn't choose her. Hokuto was faced with a fatal choice. After thinking for a bit, Hokuto replied that he was on Miki's side. Nanto swooped down on his brother. He was outraged at Hokuto's choice. Hokuto reasoned that without Mika in the mountains, they would just get lost. So she was in favor of taking Mika with her. Nanto was beyond furious. Hokuto claimed that if they couldn't find the bear, it would reach the nearest village and then the number of victims from the curses would be huge. Nanto pondered how best to proceed. Perhaps they should just ask for reinforcements and wait for another group of Omyoji, and send the old witch home? Observing his brother's doubts, Hokuto said that he understood Miki's feelings, for she too had lost people dear to her. At this time, Hokuto was thinking about Chika. That was why Hokuto was so eager to help Mika. He knew Nanto was right, but he was his brother and should forgive his choices. Mika was tired of watching her brothers argue and suggested they hit the road. The brothers followed Mika's lead. A trio of hunters set out to hunt. In the thick of the forest, Mika found fresh bear tracks. They were already close. The demon bear was very close. A rustling sound came from the bushes. Mika pointed her rifle, waiting for the target to appear. Suddenly the silhouette of a huge bear emerged from the bushes. The brothers started whispering to Mika to shoot, but the girl realized that it wasn't a demon bear. It was a regular bear with her cub. Hokuto offered to let the bears go, but Mika insisted on killing them. She thought they were pests, and even this bear cub could grow up and attack the people of the nearest village. Mika took aim at the bear cub, and suddenly noticed that it was missing one paw. Then Mika lowered her rifle. She said that this bear cub wouldn't live through the winter. He has no hind paw. He must have fallen into a trap. Even if he survives the winter, he can't live alone. Mika pointed the rifle at the mama bear. In these moments, Mika remembered her childhood. Her grandfather taught her that they lived in the neighborhood of nature, which meant they could take whatever they wanted, but it's best not to cross the boundary between our world and the natural world. One day Mika asked her grandfather what would happen if she made a mistake and crossed the border. Her grandfather answered her that in such a case she must be prepared to kill or be killed. Sometimes we don't have the right to take life away and must leave it to nature. Mika saw that the bear and cub were not crossing the river, which meant they would not reach the village. Mika decided to let them go. At that moment, a beastly roar was heard from the bushes. From the thicket of the forest, a bear of enormous size came out at the boys. The bear's eyes were burning with hellfire, and smoke was coming out of its mouth. The bear stood on a rock and looked down at the hunters. Suddenly the bear stood up on his hind legs and roared. The brothers were terrified. They screamed together with the bear. The bear began to slide down the cliff below. Mika pointed her rifle at him. She shot the demon bear, but the bullet did not hit the demon bear. It continued its rapid approach to our heroes. Then Nanto entered the fray. He cast a fencing spell on the demon bear, but the demon bear managed to attack Mika. With one swipe of his clawed paw, he threw the girl back a few meters. Thanks to the fencing spell, the demon bear was temporarily immobilized. Nanto restrained it with his energy. Nanto ordered Hokuto to carry Mika out of here. Nanto was confident that they couldn't defeat the demon bear even though it was alone. Nanto calculated that his energy would be enough to hold off the demon bear for another 5 minutes. It takes 8 minutes to get to his motorcycle. Hokuto has 3 minutes left to escape from the demon bear. Hokuto doubted if he would be able to escape. Hokuto grabbed Mika in his arms and ran into the forest. On the way, he thought about how he had no right to be late. Hokuto ran through the forest holding the unconscious girl in his arms. He thought about the fact that the demon bear barrier was still 5 minutes away, and Nanto should arrive in 8 minutes. How should he run from the bear for 3 minutes, and with Mika in his arms? Hokuto was confused. Suddenly, Hokuto remembered his high school friend named Kiyoma. Kiyoma carried a bear bell on his backpack. The bear bell protects the traveler from a bear attack. Kiyoma told me that bears have much sharper hearing than humans. When they hear a loud bell ringing, they stay away. Kiyoma liked to hike in the mountains and often offered to keep Hokuto company. But Hokuto wasn't interested in hiking, thinking of Kiyoma as a mountain nerd. In addition, Kiyoma said that when encountering a bear, there is very little chance of survival. Despite their size, bears are very fast and their sense of smell is stronger than that of dogs. If a person is on the leeward side, they have no chance of survival. Then you can try to cover yourself with bear feces, but it is not certain that this will help. Now Hokuto regretted not asking Kiyoma more. Hokuto stopped to determine the direction of the wind. Suddenly, Hokuto felt himself flying downward. Indeed, he had stepped on a trap and fallen into the moat with Mika. It was already nightfall and Hokuto and Mika were still in the forest. Mika finally came to her senses. She still couldn't calm down after the demon bear attacked her. Hokuto gave Mika first aid. Nanto stayed near the demon bear to create a barrier and contain it. Nanto must return for them. Mika asked Hokuto where her rifle was. Hokuto replied that the rifle was left at the scene of the fight, near the demon bear. Mika now realized that their opponent was a damned monster. It was unlikely to be shot like a wild animal. Suddenly, Mika asked Hokuto if he could use that magic technique again. Hokuto didn't know for sure if he could do it. At this time, Nanto was still holding back the barrier around the demon bear. The demon bear took different forms and waited for Nanto's energy to run out. Sitting in the pit, Hokuto blamed himself for rushing into the attack. Now he was thinking that it would have been better if he had run away. Mika thought for a moment. She noticed that the demon bear, like that deer, had a chest that looked like it was rotting. The demon bear might be a monster, but she had seen its heart. so it's okay to aim for its heart. Hokuto knew that if the demon bear was cursed with black paper, it must be on its body. Hokuto and Mika climbed out of the hole and returned to Nanto. Mika took a position in the bushes and tried to hit the demon bear in the heart. Mika relied on Hokuto. All he had to do was apply the magic technique. Hokuto ran up to the demon bear. The barrier should have stopped in a few seconds. Nanto was no longer there. The demon bear was angry. The barrier set up around him disappeared. That's when Hokuto used the exorcism technique, but the technique had no effect on the demon bear, and it swiftly threw itself at Hokuto. Hokuto began to run from the demon bear, trying to hide from it in the forest. At that time, Mika found her rifle. Hokuto was at a loss. He realized that he and Mika wouldn't last a minute. Suddenly, Hokuto saw Nanto's talismans on the ground that he had left behind in order to set up the barrier. Armed with his brother's amulets, Hokuto went to attack the demon bear. Hokuto didn't know how this fight would end, but there was no time to think. The demon bear stood up on its hind legs and roared. Hokuto got a good look at the heart in the demon bear's chest. Hokuto calmed himself down. He had a stick that had Nanto's talismans applied to it, which meant there should still be power left in it. That meant that at least he would be able to do something. Hokuto swung his stick at the demon bear. He wounded the demon bear with a stick right in the jaw. The second blow struck the monster's torso. The demon bear roared in pain. Hokuto now considered that the black paper with the spell was on the monster's heart. Hokuto took advantage of the fact that the demon's chest was open, and then wanted to strike at the heart. But the demon bear grabbed the other end of the stick and lifted Hokuto above the ground. Hokuto held onto the stick with all his might. He realized that if he let go of the stick, the demon bear would destroy him. Mika prepared her rifle and tried to aim at the demon bear's heart, but it wouldn't let go of Hokuto. Many arms grew out of the demon bear's body and tightly braided Hokuto's leg. Mika couldn't shoot the monster because she was afraid of hitting Hokuto. At that moment, Nanto on his motorcycle came flying off the cliff. He was angry that Hokuto and Mika didn't listen to him and run away. Nanto saw his brother being grabbed by the demon bear. Nanto pointed his motorcycle at the monster and stepped on the gas. The wheels of the motorcycle chewed up the monster's head and threw it back. Meanwhile, Hokuto realized that if the weight of the motorcycle puts pressure on the top of the bear rises up. That means the bear's heart becomes available for attack. Hokuto began to yell at Nanto to stop, but Nanto decided to grind the bear to a pulp. He kept pressing on the gas, which turned the bear's head into a bloody mess. Mika watched from the sidelines and couldn't understand what the brothers were doing. She thought of them as being completely out of their minds. Mika prepared to shoot. She got down on one knee and had a prosthetic leg in place of her other leg. Mika remembered her childhood, how she and her grandfather and the other villagers used to go bear hunting. That day she seriously injured her leg and had to have it amputated. Miki's grandfather could not forgive himself for letting it happen. While Mika struggled to live, her grandfather went to the forest and begged the local god to save his granddaughter. He made a vow to the mountain god that he would never return to the mountains again, in return for the mountain god helping Mika survive. Mika never blamed her grandfather for what happened to her on the hunt. After all, she was the one who decided to go with him that day, and she had overstepped the line by not listening to her grandfather. So now Mika herself wanted to avenge what she had lost. With these thoughts, she pulled the trigger of the rifle. The bullet went straight into the demon bear's heart. The monster's heart exploded into thousands of bloody particles. The beast let out its post-mortem roar and collapsed to the ground dead. Mika had been avenged. Near the demon bear's corpse, Hokuto found a piece of black paper. It was the same paper used to kill Chika. Mika was surprised that an ordinary bear became a monster because of some piece of paper. All that was left was to burn the remains of the bear and be done with it. Hokuto looked at Mika in silence, embarrassed to ask her a question. Mika realized that Hokuto was looking at the prosthetic. Mika started making jokes. She said she was very comfortable with her leg like that. You could lean a rifle on it. Hokuto looked at Mika, who was talking so positively and cheerfully about her disability, and thought about what an amazing girl she was. At that moment, Hokuto noticed Nanto crying over his motorcycle. Hokuto didn't understand why his brother was so upset. The bike was just dirty. You could just wash it and the problem would be solved. Nanto was grieving. He said the bike was broken. Now every part has to be replaced. Nanto resented that the motorcycle was covered in bear guts. It would be easier to drown the motorcycle at once instead of repairing it. Hokuto was horrified. How on earth could a motorcycle be drowned in water? Have the blood of a damn bear contaminate the entire spring? And anyway, Nanto had splattered him head to toe with the bear's guts. The brothers began to quarrel. Besides, Mika noticed that Hokuto reeked of a cadaverous odor. But still, Mika was grateful for the brothers' help. She offered to take the brothers to a place. Mika took the brothers to her grandfather's garage, where she introduced them to him. Her grandfather had acquired many cats and now worked as a mechanic. She offered to repair Nanto's motorcycle to the brothers as a thank you. The brothers were surprised. They thought Mickey's grandfather had died a long time ago, but Grandpa was alive and was a good mechanic. In a few minutes he fixed the motorcycle. Nanto was happy. Suddenly, Grandpa noticed a black cat on the doorstep of his garage. He looked at the animal with a suspicious look. Then Grandpa launched a wrench at the black cat. The children were amazed by such an act. Suddenly the cat spoke. She told Grandpa that, as always, his eyes could not be deceived. Then the black cat turned into an old woman from the Omyoji clan. Mika and the brothers were shocked and didn't understand what was happening. Nanto laughed. Mickey's grandfather snubbed the old hag Himiko. Grandpa apologized to the old lady and said he was happy to see her. He also thanked her for her help. Nanto didn't understand how Mickey's grandfather could have met old lady Himiko. She hurriedly explained to Nanto that it was she who had once sent his teacher here. The old lady introduced the brothers to Grandpa as members of the Ashiya family. Old lady Himiko noticed the wound on Mickey's face. She blamed Nanto for it. She apologized to Mika and said that Nanto was completely useless. Mika wanted to stand up for Nanto, but the old woman was adamant. Old lady Himiko rebuked Nanto for being considered one of the best Omyoji. Plus he took his brother with him, but still managed to make a mistake. The old woman was angry. She accused him of not even realizing how important the beauty of her face was to a girl. Nanto was filled with anger. How dare this old woman accuse him of everything? Nanto bluffed. He fell to his knees in front of the old woman and began to apologize. Hokuto decided to clarify one question for himself. He asked the old woman Himiko if it was possible to receive a curse if its profanity got into a person's body. The old woman replied that it was. However, if Mika survived the demon bear's attack and is still not cursed, then it shows that it is possible to avoid the curse. Then old lady Himiko decided to test Mika. She showed her a butterfly and asked if she could see it. Mika replied that she saw a blue butterfly. No one else had seen the butterfly but her. Old lady Himiko explained that it was a shikigami that was used for reconnaissance. Ordinary people can't see this technique. In our world, different things happen, including people who are sensitive to such things. But, if Mika can see the butterfly very clearly, it's proof that the scourge was in her. Mika was scared. She was worried that she could see ghosts now, and she was afraid of them. Mika's grandfather asked old lady Himiko to help his granddaughter. She replied that a technique could be applied to Mika that would block the otherworldly vision. However, old lady Himiko suggested that Mika learn Omyodo techniques. Mika and the brothers were shocked by such an offer from the old lady. Nanto was adamantly opposed to Mika being dragged into this class. Old lady Himiko needed new students and saw nothing wrong with it. Old lady Himiko watched Mika and the demon bear fight. She was in the guise of an owl. She thought Mickey had potential and she reminded Himiko of Himiko when she was young. Mika thought for a moment. She was interested in the old lady Himiko's suggestion. Nanto began to discourage Mika. He convinced her that the blink of magic was very cruel, but Mika had already made up her mind. After all, now she would have to put up with the presence of all sorts of evil in her life anyway. Besides, if Mika was scared of anything in this life, she would not climb the mountain to the demon bear. The old woman Himiko was pleased with the girl's answer. The grandfather asked Himiko to keep an eye on his granddaughter. Hokuto was downcast. He told his brother that he hadn't seen the butterfly that Mika had seen. Nanto reassured his brother. He reassured him that if Hokuto used the techniques more, he would soon be able to see everything. Besides, there was no more idiot in this world who would go after a damn bear with a stick. Hokuto believed his brother. His act was indeed brave. At that time, a bird flew to old lady Himiko's house. The bird told her that Itachi and Tanuki needed help. The brothers should follow them immediately. Itachi and Tanuki were werewolves in the guises of a weasel and a raccoon. Nanto reminded them that they were actually looking for his teacher. The old lady Himiko hit Nanto with a stick and said that he had no right to refuse his work. Nanto's motorcycle was repaired. Mika announced to Hokuto that they would now be working together. Mika and Hokuto were happy for each other. It seemed like everything had ended in the best way possible, but that wasn't the case. The demon bear had been killed, but the curse still lived. On the spot where our heroes fought the demon bear, a tiny piece of black paper with a curse was left behind. The wind picked up this piece of paper and carried it deep into the forest. The piece of black paper returned to its creator, to the black fox. The black fox picked up a piece of paper that the wind had brought him. The forest animals began to gather around the black fox. The black fox swallowed a piece of paper. This time our heroes survived the first test, but the seeds of disaster have already been sown. Nanto and Hokuto set out to help the people of Inukami Village. Inukami Village looked like a quiet lakeside village. Hokuto didn't understand what could have happened here. Nanto said that places like this were usually even more dangerous. On the way to the village, the brothers had to climb the mountains again. Nanto decided to leave the teacher's motorcycle at the foot of the mountains. Nanto put a curse on the motorcycle. Now if any man tries to steal the motorcycle, he will be cursed. At the entrance to the village of Inukami, the brothers were greeted by a statue of a wolf. Hokuto turned his attention to the statue. He noticed that he had seen such a statue before. Nanto told his brother that such statues were placed everywhere because wolves had long been honored by the locals. On the way to the village, Nanto told his brother that they were on their way to help Itachi Seishiro. This man is practically the strongest of the Omyoji, second only to Shishisei in strength. Itachi Seishiro is a workaholic to the core. He's good at secret missions, but seriously does any job he's given. They call him Flow Itachi. Hokuto asked his brother who Tanuki was. Nanto explained that Tanuki is Tanuki. Nanto was alarmed by this situation. Itachi very rarely requested the help of other Omyozo. Nanto realized that there would be a whole carload of problems. Hokuto was worried about the dangerous work he and his brother would have to do. So there are times when other Omyoji can ask others for help? Hokuto doubted that he could do anything to help the other Omyoji. After all, he didn't even know how to use basic techniques. Nanto sensed something and launched the airplane. Following the airplane, the brothers began to climb the mountain. Suddenly the airplane pointed at the unknown creature's butt. The creature was in a cage. A butt with a tail was sticking out of the opening of the cage. The creature lay motionless on the ground. It seemed to be asleep. Nanto didn't bother to look into it. He sprinted and kicked the creature's ass with his foot. It was Tanuki. Tanuki woke up. He was outraged that someone had dared to slap him on the butt. Tanuki was lying in a cage covered with a cloth. Nanto took the cloth off the cage. Then Hokuto saw that the butt and tail belonged to a girl. The girl recognized Nanto. She was glad to see him. She asked him to get her out of the cage as soon as possible. Nanto kept kicking the cage and yelling that Tanuki had grown her but so much that she looked like a boar. Tanuki begged Nanto to stop and not to bully poor Tanuki. Hokuto couldn't understand anything. So this cage girl is the Tanuki who needs their help? Why does she have an animal tail and butt? Tanuki asked for help from her brothers because her butt was stuck in the cage and the girl couldn't move. The brothers looked at the fat, furry butt that was sticking out of the cage. Hokuto was thinking about how he could get the girls out. She asked him to pull her butt. Hokuto was embarrassed. Hokuto grabbed Tanuki by the tail, but Tanuki shouted that he had grabbed the tail and that he should grab lower by the butt. Hokuto froze. He didn't understand what he was being forced to do now. He didn't want to grab anyone's ass. Then Nanto kicked Tanuki's ass with all his might. Tanuki was outraged by Nanto's behavior. Nanto was furious. He was yelling about Tanuki having the image of a beast. She might just turn into an animal. It's finally gotten to Tanuki. She had completely forgotten that she had magical skills. Nanto explained to Hokuto that Tanuki is possessed by a spirit beast, so she can change her appearance. She's just an idiot. A few seconds later, a raccoon appeared in the cage. Tanuki was finally able to transform. Hokuto was surprised. Was this really some kind of Omyoji technique too? Suddenly, the raccoon began squeaking violently. Tanuki thrashed around the cage and cursed Nanto. Now that she was a raccoon, she was completely trapped in the cage and couldn't get out. Nanto looked at the raccoon in silence and irritation grew in his soul. He quietly told his brother that he was going to kill her and had already gotten out the magic spell paper. Then Tanuki pulled herself together, turned on her brain, and turned into a little hamster that leaped through the cage. Once free, Taguni turned back into a girl. Beast spirits can enter a child's body while the child is still in the womb. Such a child is born both animal and human. In the world of Omyodo, they occupy an important place. Therefore, from the moment she was born, Tanuki belonged to the Omyodo world. She considered herself an elite among the Omyoji. Hokuto was ashamed to look into Tanuki's eyes as he grabbed her butt and tail. He covered his face with a cloth and whispered to himself that he only wanted Chika. Tanuki was proud of the show she had just put on for her brothers. Nanto looked at her with a furious look. He accused Tanuki of being a liar, making such a circus even though she could have gotten out of the cage on her own. Tanuki turned her attention to Hokuto. She wasn't familiar with him. Suddenly, Tanuki was circling around Hokuto and sniffing him. Tanuki asked Hokuto what was wrong with him. She smelled that he had strange dragon meridians. They were either battered or torn. Despite the fact that he and Nanto were twins, their dragon meridians were different. Hokuto had never heard of any dragon meridians. Nanto shut Tanuki up and said that whatever she was saying now was unimportant. He began to question her about where Itachi was now. Since they were supposed to be together, Tanuki replied that Itachi was on a secret mission. She then pointed to a large mansion that stood nearby. Itachi was there. This mansion belonged to Inugami. Itachi and Tanuki received an order directly from the owner of the mansion. He asked them to kill his son who was possessed by a beast. Hokuto was outraged. How could a father ask to kill his son? Tanuki explained that no one was happy when their child was born possessed. She knew about it better than anyone. After all, she had been through it too. She added that such a child is no more than a piece of meat to the parents. No one likes a child possessed by a beast. Besides, giving birth to such a child is very hard for the mother. It often happens that the mother dies during childbirth, and then the father hates the child even more. Tanuki was surprised that Hokuto comes from the Ashiya family, but she doesn't understand anything. Hokuto was outraged. He didn't understand how a parent could want to kill their child. Tanuki said he wouldn't understand, and if she had to, she'd eat that kid herself. Suddenly, Hokuto felt someone's gaze on him. He looked around. He felt as if someone was watching them. Tanuki thought so too. Nanto said it wasn't surprising, since they were yelling all over the place. And yet, who was watching them? Nanto speculated that it might have been someone from the mansion, and now they might know that Itachi had failed and called for backup. Tanuki was scared. Something had to be done. However, Nanto decided that since they had already been seen anyway, there was no point in hiding. He suggested that Hokuto go for a break. The owner's son used to read the stars. He talked to the stars and wished someone would get him out of the mansion. Often he had dreams of freedom, how he walks on green grass and looks up at the sky. But when he opened his eyes, all he saw were bars on the windows. The master's son was named Rokuro. A girl came to his cell to change his bandage. Rokuro was kept under lock and key. Seeing Rokuro, the girl was upset. The boy's ears grew back on his head. It was Rokuro's mother. Every day, she came to her son's house and cut off her son's animal ears with a blade. It was a purification ritual for her. Rokuro asked her not to do it, but she didn't stop. Rokuro's head was covered in blood. His mother cut off his ears again. She hugged her son and told him that she loved him in any form. She wished to rid him of his ugliness. The brothers and Tanuki made the decision to infiltrate Inugami's mansion.